Welcome to Korean from Zero. I'm George Trombley, and we are going through Korean from Zero, Book 1. Hopefully you're learning a lot. Right now we're learning the Hangul, how to read it and write it. Let's jump into it. Today we're going to be talking about pure vowel sounds, okay? And you can get the books here. Moving on. All right, so we're going to start by learning 5 new consonants, and then we're going to learn 5 new vowels. By the way, these are called jamo, just for the record, so that you know that. Jamo are the parts that make up a Hangul character, okay?
비읍,
And the name of this jamo is
비읍, 시옷, 이응, 지읒, 치읓.
Now remember before we talked about that you're going to have a problem maybe with O and O sound because they're similar. This is another one you're going to struggle with. This jiut
지읒,
and
치읓.
chiut. They are similar sometimes, and it will be a little bit confusing. Spelling in Korean will be a little bit of a task. Some words you're just gonna have to remember, okay, that's how I spell it, but it's gonna be, just be ready for it. I think if you know it's gonna be an issue, you'll be like, okay, yeah, he was right, it's an issue. Every language seems to have something that is an issue, okay? Now, today, this is going to be a primary focus of what we talk about, this.
이응,
It's super important in Korean language. You'll find out what it means null in a second, but when it's used in a certain spot, a thing called a 받침, which is the final consonant, we're gonna learn that, it will be sounding like 응, okay? But this just says 학교에서 우리 으라고 해요. So this is, in school when they say it,
으,
they read it as but it's not. It's really never pronounced that way unless it's got the proper vowel below it. So one more time, B sound, which can also sound like a P, depending. You're going to hear that today. It's not always B. It's going to be P also, depending on if it's in the beginning or midway through.
비읍, 브,
Okay. Shiot always is going to be an S, but it can be S sound or sh sound, which we will learn. Don't get overwhelmed. Just learn the words as we go and you'll get it.
이응,
This is a very special character.
지읒, 치읓.
All right, moving on. All right, vowels. Okay, so another pain point in Korean is this.
으,
We're going to talk about it in a second. We already learned an but it wasn't,
으,
it was
으,
All right, keep that in mind. We'll show you in a second.
이, 에.
We also already learned an e. This is why Korean, although Korean writing is geniusly easy to learn, knowing how to spell is like, well, which e was it? Because there are 2 e sounds also.
에,
And there are 2 sounds.
으,
Okay? That's going to be your pain point.
요,
Sup,
요,
sup.
요,
How
유,
doing? How you doing?
유,
All right, that was dumb.
요, 유, 유.
Busy later? All right, sorry, I'm having too much fun. All right, so if you need an English understanding of what these sounds like, it's these down here. You just read these here. All right, let's get to the main bulk of what we're trying to do today. We're going to talk about these pure vowel sounds, okay? So if you ever want to say just the vowel sound, because the rule is you always need to have a consonant to start, this is like a filler. This iung fills the spot, and this becomes
아, 이, 오, 에.
all right? Easy enough? If it is in the first position, it doesn't make a sound. You only say the vowel sound.
아, 이, 오, 에.
You know, I'm a little bit envious of you guys. I had so much fun learning Korean. I wish I could go back and do it again. I hope you're having fun, guys. All right, so these are just what we talked about before, what was on that prior page. And here I'm just showing you that there are, I could just show you on the last page. Notice that these are on the right they're side by side like this because it just happens to be a tall vowel. And because these are laying down on the O, it's down below the iyung, okay? All right.
A. E.
Okay. That's pretty easy, right? And if they are horizontal like this,
O. U.
okay? All right. Now let's look at some example words that use the iyung in its null position. Null meaning it doesn't say anything. It doesn't make any sound, okay?
아이. 아이. 우유. 우유. 이유. 이유.
I'm going to, no, never, I was going to say something. I'm going to talk about it later. We're going to talk later in another video about the differences between North Korean and South Korean, because there is this particular word
이유.
in North Korean is ryu.
이유.
And we'll talk about it. You don't have to learn that. You do not have to learn that because as an American or as a foreigner, it's actually really, really difficult to get to North Korea. I've never been there. You sometimes have to go through like China. It's complicated. So don't worry about North Korean. I know that question comes up every now and then. Let's just learn South Korean right now.
이유.
We'll talk about the
이유.
later.
오다. 오다.
Okay, cooking.
요리. 요리. 어디. 어디.
You can literally just say, where are you? 어디? Where are you? 어디? You can just do that among friends. Okay? Don't do it to someone you don't know.
아기. 아기. 이. 이.
All right. Now, we're going to have to address another issue that's kind of a pain point, especially when you are doing noraebang, when you go to sing at a Korean noraebang. If you ever get there, I hope you do this. It's really fun. If you live in a major city in any country, they probably have Korean karaoke rooms also. Handwritten fonts are sometimes used in the songs, and it makes it very difficult to read when you're first learning Korean. But let's look at some major differences so you can kind of avoid them. So for the jiut character,
지읒.
you'll see that when it's written, it looks something like this or something like this actually. But often the font will be, notice that this extends out. So it looks like a whole different character, but it's the same character. And the same thing with
치읓. 치읓.
jiut. It could be this straight line or this curved line and no extending line here. Just like, it's really just jiut with a separate line on top of it, okay? But this will mess you up sometimes, okay? So just be aware of it. Be aware that in the beginning is the hardest. It's the hardest in the very, very beginning because there's so many new things like how to try to recognize the characters, how to build the characters, how the pronunciation works, okay? But you'll get through it, trust me. If I can get through it, you can get through it. All right, so now let's look at the different sounds of shiot. So this one, you just got to be aware of it. There's no, I really don't have a pattern to give you. It's just that sometimes it's a s sound and sometimes it's a sh sound. But I think it's I never got confused over this. But just to show you, to make sure you understand.
세. 사. 세. 서. 수. 소. 스.
Now, I want to take advantage of the fact that we have these similar sounds next to each other just to talk about this. But notice how these are both the A sounds.
세. 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 세.
Now, when Purum was recording these, she recorded them over and over again, but she wanted to make sure that she gave them slightly different sounds. But I have met Koreans that don't know the difference really. And I have met some that swear they can tell the difference. But it took me a while. Actually, no, I'm not even going to lie. I don't think I could tell you the difference. If I just heard
세.
versus
세.
I wouldn't know. I would only know if I heard the word because I know how to spell it. because my spelling has improved quite significantly with Korean.
새, 새,
But really, that is the same sound, honestly. All right, now these are much easier to hear the difference. Listen to these.
수, 스, 수, 스,
Now, I think there's a graphic coming up, and so we'll repeat it then. But when you say this one,
수,
you make your mouth like this.
수,
And when you say the other one,
스,
you say it like this. S. You don't make the kissy. So this is like kiss, like a kiss. Su.
스,
And if you just make if you hold the note, su, you can hear the difference. That's how they're doing this. And of course, these.
서, 소,
She's lengthening this, but it doesn't have to be lengthened. It could just be so,
소, 서,
so. It's the same thing with so. Your mouth is going to be rounded. So I met, of all people, a Japanese girl at a language meetup in Gangnam, in the Gangnam area, from the Gangnam Style song. And we became friends. And I remember she had this really interesting habit of staring at my mouth when we talked. Okay. And I realized she does that so she can see how my mouth is moving, because it helps her understand what's being said in Korean more. If you ever have a dictation assignment in class when you're learning Korean, look at the mouth. It helps a lot. So once I learned that that's what she was doing, I started doing it too, and my Korean comprehension increased. So keep that in mind. All right, so these are all S sounds. Now let's look at sh sounds.
셔, 시, 샤, 쇼, 슈,
Sounds Chinese, doesn't it?
셔, 샤, 시, 쇼, 슈,
Now we haven't learned these yet, okay? But they're coming up. But I just wanted to show you
셔, 샤,
before we got to them, okay? Now, I did say just now that Korean sounds Chinese. Chinese, a lot of Chinese influence is in the Korean language. Just like if you learn Japanese, you know, a lot of words came from China. Same thing, but to a bigger extent in Korea. A lot of times where, and again, I know you might not know Japanese, but Japanese will use an English word. They were more influenced by English. Korea has a ton of words that are purely from China, whereas Japan has them from English. Kind of if you're learning both languages, it's a good thing to know. All right. So now let's look at the differences between and eh. There's none. That's why this is up there. I'm just kidding. All right.
에, 에,
So this is my current understanding.
에,
A little bit longer,
에,
a little bit shorter. But honestly, when they speak it, I cannot hear the difference. You might not be able to hear the difference. And again, like I said, I've only met a few Koreans that claim they can hear the difference. Many books will tell you they're just the same,
에,
including our book.
에,
All right. Now let's look at the difference between u and u. And this is really easy to demonstrate. So look at the mouth again.
우,
You can imagine that in order to fit this character in your mouth, you have to make it rounder. This one
으,
fits in your mouth when it's like stretched out a little bit like this. Ooh, ooh.
우, 으,
All right. It's the same sound coming out of your throat. It's the shape of the mouth that changes it. All right. That's it. Let's look at some words that we can now write with our new consonants and vowels.
비, 비,
Also, a famous K-pop artist from back in the day.
자유, 자유, 비, 차,
This is a weird one. It can mean car and tea. Just because Koreans don't use the Chinese characters, that it would be a completely different Chinese character, but because Korea unified to use Hangul in like the 1600s, King Sejong, I believe, this can mean both. But when you hear it, you'll never think, oh, do you want to drink a car together? It'll be contextual. It'll make sense to you.
차, 개미, 개미, 버스,
Now this one Even though it's B sound, boss, it is so like a P.
poss, poss,
Right? If you're an American, tell me in the comments if you're hearing it as a B. It's definitely a P sound.
poss. 베개,
Same thing here. It's pege is how I hear it.
베개, 베개. 주스, 주스. 고기, 고기,
This one sounds a little bit cut off. 고기.
고기.
All right. There are our words. Thank you for learning with us. If you want to get the books, they're up on Amazon, and you can, of course, currently go to KoreanFromZero.com or FromZero.com if you're watching in the much more farther future. Thanks for watching, guys. See you next time. 다음에 봐요. Great job, everyone. I hope you're enjoying your time learning Korean. In Lesson C, the very next lesson, we will be learning 4 more consonants and 5 more vowels, and then talking about the hard Korean sounds. Not hard as in difficult, but hard sounding Korean sounds. See you then.